Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Old Biker Dude Show, Home Edition. And today we're going to be making a recipe that's been asked about in comments. I always take, feel free to list in the comments anything you'd like to see me make. I'll try just about anything. But a lot of people have been asking about lasagna. Does Old Biker Dude have a lasagna recipe? Yes, I do. And that's what we're going to be making today. Y'all ready? Set, go. Well, the very first thing I start to do when I'm going to build my lasagna is getting all my parts ready. And that means getting my red bell peppers and onions fried in a little bit of avocado oil. And then of course I'm going to cook up a little bit of sausage right over here while my water is boiling right over here. And I've been out to Mrs. Old Biker Dude's spice garden and collected some whole leaf oregano and thyme from fresh out of the garden. And then my other ingredients are going to be a bag of baby spinach. And I'm going to be adding in mushrooms. I shop particularly for very large mushrooms at the grocery store for this. And you'll see why I do that here when I layer my lasagna. Now before things get going too much, one of my little flavor enhancers I like to use is Japanese mirin. It's just a sweet cooking seasoning. And I'm going to dose my vegetables with it and kind of spark them up a little bit. And then of course I'm going to add a little pepper. I like to get my vegetables just right that are going in here. I use a little bit of garlic powder, although I will be using some real garlic here in just a moment. Now while my peppers and onions are stir frying, I'm going to start building my meat sauce in this pot. I'll start with a tablespoon of garlic. I don't want to cook that in here because I don't want to scorch the garlic. I'm going to take a pretty nice little healthy part of my oregano and my thyme, and I'm going to just mix it with my base is going to be this organic tomato and basil pasta sauce from Full Circle. It's USDA organic, gluten-free, and non-GMO. And then of course I do have a couple of garden fresh bay leaves. These are not dried. They're actually nice and fresh, as you can see. And they're going to go in the meat sauce also. Now, of course, if you don't have these kind of fresh ingredients, it's perfectly okay to use the, the ones out of a spice bottle. Like, But I try to use fresh when I can. And I'm just going to dump my pasta sauce right in here. And I'm actually going to save most of my spices to put in the lasagna layers as I go. And then I'm not actually going to put these peppers and onions into the meat sauce. I'm just going to remove them from the heat and use them as the top for my pot of water over here that's waiting to do my lasagna noodles. And you might notice I'm not really using a whole lot of sausage. It's probably less than 1/3 of a pound. So my meat sauce is really going to be more of a vegetable sauce with a little meat in it. And then as I start to heat my sauce very slowly, there's the larger mushrooms I told you about. I choose these for a reason, because I'm going to cut them kind of thin, and when I build my layers of lasagna, they're going to actually be laid in there as a layer all by themselves. And then of course when my sausage is browned, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the meat sauce pot. Just basically I'm just preparing all my ingredients separately and adding them into the pot there. And then here are my mushrooms sliced up, ready to add into the building process of the lasagna. See, I like them sliced about like that right there. And essentially I'm just going to lay them all out flat during one layer of the lasagna. Now a little trick I use when preparing my spinach leaves is I just lay them out on a baking sheet like this right here. I take them, I've already washed them in the bag. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to lose all my vitamins in the liquid when I cook them down. So I'm going to just take and put them on a baking sheet, and I'm going to slide them in the oven for a few minutes. And I think I'll add just a little bit more whole leaf oregano and some thyme to my meat sauce, and just a little bit more pepper. And you know, as you saw, I use fresh garden vegetables or fresh garden spices, except one. I am going to use some dry basil on my veggies, and the reason I do that is because fresh basil from out of a garden is very pungent, and I don't want to over influence the mix of the spices in my lasagna, so I do use dry even when I use fresh spices for the rest of the ingredients. Now I'm not actually cooking these mushrooms, I'm just using this pan for a place to stage them until I'm ready to add them to my lasagna. Now of course here's my glass casserole dish that I'm going to bake this in. I'm just going to let it sit right here on top of this frying pan that's got the onions and peppers in it, and it'll sort of just warm the glass a little bit because I'm still making my meat sauce. It's going to simmer for a little while my water is getting ready to make the noodles. And while this stage of the process is happening, I'm going to prepare my ricotta cheese mixture. And for that part of the process, the first thing I'm going to do is pop a couple of eggs into my mixing bowl. Now, as you can see, my bag of spinach has reduced down a little bit, but there's still some integrity in the leaves. They're not all mushy. And while there is a little bit of liquid over here on the side, and I'm going to take and add that liquid right here into my meat sauce so that I don't waste any of the nutrients. See? And my meat sauce seems to be doing well. You may recognize the way that I'm simmering it here as Old Biker Dude's blurt blurt method. Now you may have noticed that at no point while preparing this have I added any salt to anything. The reason for that is that we try to cook fairly low sodium here. Now one thing I don't do, and I'll be honest with you, I don't scrimp on the ricotta cheese. I do use the ricotta that's made from whole milk. But anyway, I'm going to beat my 2 eggs up real quick. And surprisingly not that well. See, I'm only going to do them about like that. And then I'm going to add my ricotta cheese to it. You can see there's that nice thick ricotta that's made out of whole milk. That just, to me, that just really makes the lasagna. And you'll notice when I go to layer this how carefully I put that in there, because again, I want my food to taste good, but I also want it to look good when somebody cuts it on their plate. And then I'm going to add my spinach to my ricotta cheese sauce. And there's a little bit more liquid there, so I'm going to pour it into my meat sauce so I'm not wasting any nutrients. And then as my water's almost about to boil, I'm going to give my ricotta cheese sauce a mix. Try to get all this spinach incorporated all the way into it and spread out pretty good. And that usually takes me a few minutes. I'll stand here and mix this around until that water's ready. I'm not in any hurry right now. My meat sauce is just over here simmering gently. I've got nothing to do now but wait on my water to be ready, and I can start building lasagna. And now, as you can see, the spinach is well incorporated into the ricotta cheese mixture so that there's plenty in every part, and it's pretty much ready to add in. And then just as my noodles, I'm putting them in the boiling water, I'm going to add just a little bit of this Irish butter. And to help the noodles not stick together too much, I'm going to add just a little bit of avocado oil to the boiling water pot. And are we still in bloop bloop mode? Yes, we are. And one more little note of something that I do. The package that the lasagna noodles came in says to cook 10 to 12 minutes. I don't do that. I cook about 6 to 8 minutes because I believe when it's baking with as much liquid as I'm going to have in my lasagna, that they're going to still be just fine and have a little bit better texture when you're cutting into it. Now the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is put a little bit of the meat sauce in the bottom, but I don't want to waste a lot of my chunky part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour my liquid into the strainer. And as you see, that first layer that goes into the pan is going to be free of any clumpy parts or anything. And I'm going to put that part of the meat sauce back into my pan. So as you can see, that's a lot thicker and it'll contribute to a better structural integrity inside my noodles. And then I just move this around and coat the bottom nice and evenly. And then that provides, protection against the noodles sticking to the bottom of my baking pan. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place all of my different ingredients here that I'll need to build my lasagna so that I can work right here in a nice little enclosed area to construct my lasagna. And that brings us to the age-old argument of, do you put your lasagna noodles in your pan sideways or long ways? And the answer for mine is sideways. And the reason that I do this is so that I have this overlapping area that curves up on the side and ends of each noodle. I also do not overlap my bottom layer. And that brings me to a very important part. You remember I got the large mushrooms and cut them flat. And that's what I cover my first layer with in the bottom of my lasagna. Now, as the lasagna heats in the oven, these mushrooms are going to shrink. And that's going to make up for the rising nature of the ricotta cheese. So as the ricotta fluffs in and rises, the mushrooms are going to shrink and it won't make it overflow the pan that way. But you'll have a nice smooth mushroom base over that first layer of lasagna noodles, which is why I didn't have to overlap them. And now I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of meat sauce in here. Not very much, actually. And it's more for the reason of holding things together. That meat sauce will also fall down on top of the noodles as the mushrooms begin to shrink. You'll notice that I've lined mushrooms around the outside standing up also. And that's going to also help the structural integrity of the sides of my lasagna so it can be cut smoothly. And I'm also going to put a little mozzarella cheese in here. And that's what we're doing right now. Just going to, not really very much at all. What this is going to do is sort of start to melt and act like glue to keep the mushrooms stuck together, so that when you cut into the finished product, the fact that the noodles are not overlapping, the mushrooms will have sort of a tacky nature and they'll form almost like a plate at the very bottom. And now my first layer of ricotta cheese with the spinach mixed in. I'm just going to stick it around in different places. I'm not going to put a whole bunch next to the edges because I want it to stay sort of in the middle, like this right here. And again, what this is going to do is sort of rise and fill in some of these little gaps that will be caused by the mushrooms beginning to shrink as they heat. And that was the reason why I did not cook the mushrooms before adding them into my mixture. So basically what I want to do here is just spread out a kind of a thinner layer of ricotta, but I want it to cover as much as I can without getting too close to the edges. And now I lay another layer of noodles into the pan or into the dish. And this time I do overlap them because I'm going to put the next layer of meat sauce and cheese in pretty heavy. And now, as you can see, I have laid out a nice layer of the meat sauce, and I'm going to add right over the top of that some more ricotta mixture with the spinach in it. And it did come out just perfect. We used up every bit of our ricotta mixture and have a nice even layer right there. Now y'all might be asking, hey old biker dude, what happened to your onions and peppers? Well, I'm fixing to show you. And there you are. There's a nice even layer of the onions and peppers right over the top. And I'm going to shake even the last couple of drops of the juice out of there. I don't want to waste anything. But that sits right on top of the ricotta. I'm not going to press on it because I don't want it to be down inside it. I want it to kind of lift it up. The ricotta is going to be sort of like a power lifter here. And you'll notice that on these last ones right here, I actually did put them long ways and overlap them a lot more. And I cut one sort of custom to go right here in the end, like this. I better put it this way so that little curved part will be down. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do right here after I add my meat sauce and cheese. Okay, just had to do a little battery change. Not sure how much of that last shot I missed, so I'm just going to go back through this again. I took a knife and went around the outside and cut off those parts that were up over the edge of the pan. And now I've laid some more meat sauce right there. And I'm going to cover the whole thing with mozzarella cheese. Basically, all the noodle parts and everything. And I have a lot of cheese on it. Like that right there. And then I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil and pop her in the oven for 45 minutes. And then now, while it's baking in the oven, I get to do my cleanup, which is the most fun part of it all. I enjoy cleaning up more than any other part. Okay, we've been in the oven for 45 minutes, and we get to now see the almost finished product. We're going to take off our, oh, that smells so good. We're going to take off our aluminum foil. We've got a pretty good melt here, and take a little peek in there, see if my ricotta did good. It did. So I'd say this is ready to feed to the family. And of course, naturally, I can't feed my family something that I'm not willing to eat myself. And there you see the mushrooms on the bottom, nice and brown and done, mixed with the ricotta. I'm going to take and scoop that little piece off of there. And we'll take a little taste of this. See, the ricotta seems to have jumped up there pretty good. Oh, that looks really good in there. I like that. And we'll take us a little taste. Oh, that's awesome.